Today we're looking at dimming LED lamps. Believe it or not, Gary, some people still call them LED bulbs as if they grow out of the ground.
Okay, yes. So what we've got set up here is our 4 halogen lamps and our legacy dimmer, and that's probably what's in our installation, and then at some point we're going to have to swap those out for LEDs.
Yeah, so we thought we'd make this video to update the viewers on the various choices you have, because lamp technology has moved on enormously in terms of retrofit LED lamps, and so has the dimmer technology as well. And there's lots of videos out there, but they don't necessarily reflect the true state of affairs that we have with LED lamps, and actually in some ways how easy it can be. So stay tuned for that. We have got some technical bits. We have got the scope on the desk. We don't want to scare you back to your school science lesson. But Gary, let's have a look at what people may have installed today, halogen lamps that we're going to try and replicate.
So let's look at their performance. So if I bring in the camera here, I'm bringing it up to full brightness. Talk us through first of all what's happening on the scope, and then we'll alter the brightness of the lamps as well through the dimmer.
Okay, so on the scope we can see our AC waveform that's going into the lamps. Now you'll hear a lot referred to as leading edge dimmer.
Okay.
And that's probably the legacy dimmer that you may have fitted in your installation. I believe there still are some on the market for new installs. And trailing edge is the other alternative, but these leading edge ones, what will happen is that as the lamps are dimmed, the leading edge of the waveform is actually truncated to reduce the voltages going into the lamps. So you can see the further that the lamp is dimmed, the more of the waveform is chopped away, and that gives us that nice smooth dimming with a halogen lamp.
Okay, and we're all the way down there to its least bright setting. Okay, so let's pull it back up again. So there we were on our waveform, and we can see it in faster motion chopping the front part of that waveform off as a leading edge dimmer. Okay, so these lamps now start to expire over time. They're very difficult to replace. We want to make a choice to go to LED. So what we'll do next, Gordon, if we swap these out and put our LED lamps in and repeat the process again.
Okay, so if you just switch the dimmer off for me, Gary, and I'll just twist them out. Luckily they're not too hot, otherwise I'd now have burnt fingers. And I'll put these lamps in that we got from V-TAC.
Right, so they're all going to be the same, and we're going to apply the legacy dimmer. So it might be what you've done at home, isn't it? You know, the lamps have gone out, you've popped down to your local hardware store and you've replaced them now with the ones that you've chosen off the shelf. You've probably not spent a lot of time looking at the lamp, but hopefully looking at our previous videos, you've looked for one that is dimmable. So you look for that symbol to suggest they're dimmable.
Yeah, so these are dimmable lamps. Good news. And yeah, so hopefully we're expecting them to dim. What a lot of manufacturers do is publish a whole chart of which dimmers they're compatible with, but probably most people wouldn't do that when they're stood in front of them at the shop or on a website to go and check first, because you may not know what the dimmer on the wall is. Absolutely. Even in the first place. So we've just gone ahead, put on our legacy dimmer. So go on, Gary, power us up.
Right, okay, so if we go up we come. So we'll bring the other camera back in. So I'll have them on full brightness there. Exactly the same waveform, it's chopping the front part off. You agreed?
It is, yes. So same waveform.
Okay, so I'm going to start bringing it down. So here we go. So let's bring the brightness down.
So you can see again that waveform being on the leading edge, being cut away. Right.
That's it.
You're not carrying on, Gary?
No, I can't go any further. That's it. I've stopped at that point there.
Okay.
That didn't seem a lot of change from maximum brightness to the low end.
Okay, so that is the first problem sometimes with dimming LED lamps, that because of our legacy dimmer, there's only so low you can go with the lamps. And personally, if that was in my house, I probably wouldn't be happy with that. It's nowhere near the performance I had with the halogen lamp.
Well, no, it isn't. It's absolutely nowhere near the performance. So if I just bring that back up quickly and then back down, that's it. That's as much as I've got. And I've not dimmed to the point of where we're going off either.
Yeah. Now, straight away, someone's going to go, oh, well, I need to change the dimmer. And in the past, that may have been true. But what I'm going to do now, Gary, I'm going to swap that for a different set of lamps from a different manufacturer and see what happens now.
Right, okay, so I'm going to pop these ones back out. So these are dimmable LED from a different manufacturer, and you think these will have a better performance with our legacy dimmer?
Yeah, so these ones are from Ledvance. They're still branded as Osram lamps. There's a bit of history there, but we'll not go into that now.
Okay, so these are Osram ones then, and we're going to do exactly the same again. It's going to chop the waveform in exactly the same form. So let's bring that one back in. Let's put them onto full brightness. Okay, so we can see the oscilloscope's doing exactly the same as it was before, and I'll just bring down the brightness. I've got a lot more control there.
Yeah, so with that lamp you can actually dim to off with our legacy dimmer.
That is really good. Let's do that a little bit quicker. Yeah, all the way. That's got a very good range.
Yeah.
So from the installer's point of view and the customer's point of view, I've kept my legacy dimmer. I have replaced my halogen ones. I've got the nice energy saving benefits of using LED, but I've also got the performance now that my halogen ones had before as well, Gordon.
Yeah, so now obviously we corrected that just by changing the lamps, but let's revisit those lamps we've just had with a different dimmer combination.
So we brought back in our V-TAC lamps. Let's just remind ourselves how low we can go with those. So if we're back here at full brightness, our legacy dimmer only can bring it down to there, Gordon. How are we going to solve that problem?
Okay, so we're going to swap over to a different dimmer and a different dimming technology. So if I unplug
I'll do it. I'm in. Yes, I'm in.
So we're going to move over to a trailing edge dimmer, and again the name gives it away that the waveform is going to be chopped on the falling edge of the AC waveform.
Right, okay, and that may affect the performance of these lamps, one that might be a benefit then.
I'm hoping so.
So I'm on a Knightsbridge dimmer now, so let's bring it over. So we've got that's at full brightness, and I'm going to just bring this down.
Yeah, so you'll see that the waveform is now being chopped on the falling edge or the trailing edge of the AC waveform. And you've got you're dimming down, you've gone all the way off.
Okay, so I'll do that last little bit a little bit slower. So I'll bring it back up, and then I'll just go really slowly now on that very final part of the dimming process. And there we go, and it will dim to off.
Dim to off, which is a significant improvement. A little bit of technical there, Gary. Or if you want to bring in some terms to look good in front of the customer, you'd refer to that as the dimming curve.
Right.
And so these lamps, you can see from that, actually a lot of the dimming occurs in that final bit of the AC waveform, as opposed to when we had our earlier lamps, the dimming occurred at the higher end of the AC waveform.
And it just proves that those lamps, when we had them with our legacy dimmer, didn't work very well. But it wasn't necessarily a failing of the lamps themselves. It was the fact that this time we needed to improve the dimmer. We chose the Knightsbridge one, and we got a lot better low end, didn't we? We got it all the way to dim to off, where it wouldn't do it before. Yeah,
and we're going to look at that low end performance a little bit more detail in another video. So watch out for that. It might be in the eye above my head, depending on where you're watching. But before we move on, Gary, let's just mix things up a little bit. Let's put a range of different manufacturers' lamps on the same dimmer.
So we changed the lamps over, Gordon, against our dimmer. Which lamps are we using now?
Okay, so I've brought back in the Osram lamp supplied by Ledvance, introduced one from Philips, one from Aurora, and the V-TAC lamp we saw earlier, and they're connected to the Hamilton Lightstat dimmer.
And we'd expect them all to perform exactly the same. You agreed?
Let's bring the dimmer cam in.
Let's have a look.
Let's put that up to full power. So I'm now going to slowly wind down the dim levels of those lamps. You can already see they're going. Oh, we've just lost the Osram lamp, closely followed by the Philips, and the other two lamps have gone to a minimum level.
So they didn't all perform exactly the same, did they, Gordon?
No, and that touches on something mentioned earlier about this dimming curve, and clearly different lamps are set up in different ways. You know, the Osram lamp lose a lot of its output at the higher part of the waveform. The Philips, I'd suggest, in the mid-range of the AC waveform, and then these other two lamps need a lot of the output goes at the bottom end of the AC waveform.
And that's clear when installing the lamps in the first place, to choose exactly the same lamp for each of your fittings. And people are probably thinking, well, that's pretty obvious, Gaz. But over time, some of those lamps might fail, and what's the tendency then to happen? Yeah,
well, you just grab a replacement and put it in, and then suddenly, yeah, you've got different lamps at different light levels when the dimmer's being altered. Yeah, not a good situation.
Not a good situation at all. So that's probably a top tip in it. So when you're installing your lamps, make sure when you replace them, they're exactly the same lamp as you had before. Otherwise, these dimming characteristics are going to be different. However, another top tip is that if you have a legacy dimmer and you choose the appropriate dimmable LED lamp, you can get them to work perfectly, can't you, Gordon?
You can. And then obviously by introducing a different dimmer, you can improve that performance of almost any lamp. And that's something we're going to look at in the next video, is that choosing an LED dimmer and then seeing how you can do an additional setup on the dimmers themselves to improve performance, and particularly what we saw there in that low end. You know, it's a personal choice, isn't it, whether you want the dim completely to off, yeah, and possibly run the risk of plunging your guests into complete darkness when someone's messing with a dimmer, or park your lamp at a stable low end level, and that is something we're going to look at.
We're always interested in your opinions. What's your go-to lamp? What's your go-to dimmer? What's your experience of dimming LED lamps? Any top tips that you want to share with us at eFIXX? Please leave those comments below, and we'll try and get back to as many as we can.